Astra Hunter Zosma. Took me long enough, right? Astra Hunter Zosma is the latest game released by Torch60, which I've covered enough on this channel that I probably don't need to introduce them again. And wow, does it feel good to play another Torch60 game? Like, just at the title screen, I already had a big old smile on my face. I don't know how to describe it, but the music, the art, these games just give me a warm feeling. In Astra Hunter Zosma, we play the role of, well, Zosma, this loser treasure hunter that nobody likes. Trying to become the best Astra Hunter, he finds himself repeatedly going to the same dungeon over and over without making any progress. This is one day changed, however, with the power of the angry wall smash opening a secret path. He must have learned that one from Zero. This causes a trapdoor to open, leading to an incredibly long fall that lands him face to face with the large crescent tower. Seeing this as his opportunity to find treasure and potentially rise up the ranks as the best Astra Hunter, he enters this tower, and needless to say, gets far more than he bargained for. Exploring the different floors, all representing different places and times in the world, helping the characters within them while also helping himself as a person. All the while being tagged along by this strange cat-like blob creature and a mysterious masked woman guiding him through the tower, saying that he has a purpose here that he will come to learn over the course of this journey. I think that's the most I can say without spoiling too much. I was pretty surprised the direction that they decided to go with this story. While the style of this game is the classic T60 combo we all know, the premise of the story allows for a lot of colorful and distinct environments, all hosting an assortment of different characters and musical themes. I really like how each set of floors have their own battle theme as well, and oh, that's weird. These battles? Hold on, let me look a little closer. Are side view? Huh. But, hey, my bad, y'all. I thought we were playing a Torch60 game. I must have gotten games mixed up. Sgt.M would never make a side view game. Don't bring up Soma Onion, you're ruining the bit here. But yeah, I was really excited. I thought I was gonna play a Torch60 game, but wait, is that a jump pad? Green, yellow, all that? Makes you jump? Oh shoot. Yeah, never mind. This is a Torch60 game. Whew, scared me for a second there. I'm just playing. They just wanted to try something new with this one. I think the side view battles are pretty neat. I like that some characters have animations to show that they're about to use a strong magic skill. I mean, to be fair, you can sort of do that in front battles too. But it's still cool, damn it. You get to see Zosma and his cat, that's neat. I don't know. I think some people make a big deal over side view versus front view battles, but it's all just kind of visual and vibe to me. I'm sure they exist, but I find the idea of someone so disgusted by one over the other that they straight up refuse to play games with a certain style is just strange. Like, oh, it's a front view game. This game could have been front view and it'd play the exact same. We're picking menu options and we're watching attacks play out. As an Astra Hunter, Zosma has a rank which can be increased from this game's major focus on collecting treasure. These can be found strewn about dungeons, not too dissimilar to the boba of Soma Union, but also in special gold chests, these being more specific items with large values. Sgt.M said he was inspired by the Great Cave Offensive, which was one of the scenarios in Kirby Superstar back on the SNES. In that game, Kirby falls down a pit and ends up in this massive area divided into sections, each with their own environment, music, enemies to face, and treasure to collect. However, the treasure collecting itself in Zosma is a lot more in-depth, with most of them being hidden behind puzzles, having a corresponding note hint to help you out. For example, the first note you get tells you to return to where two monsters jumped out of a hole. Oh yeah, there was a forced encounter in the previous room. I go there, hit a switch on the wall, and boom, get the treasure. Early on, it's possible to solve some of these on your own, but as the game goes on, it starts to become more required to find these notes first. So shoutouts to me not getting scammed by this dude trying to sell me the hint. Dirty ass scalper. I solved this one on my own. So while you may think you're clever for noticing a hidden wall and walking through it, that usually just leads to the hint chest. This is just the first step to getting the treasure. Even though it's inspired by Great Cave Offensive, some of these puzzles that need to be solved reminds me more of Kirby's Dream Land 3, which I heard some loser call the best Kirby game at some point. I was reminded of that through the puzzles where you have to make certain shapes with objects. There is a variety though. It's not always just solving a puzzle, sometimes you need to fight a mini-boss guarding it, with the treasure notes serving more as a hint to the mini-boss's mechanics. I'm also a big fan of the treasures themselves. Much like with the Great Cave, we got all sorts of goofy items and references to other games as well. Not just Torch 60 games, but other indie games I've looked at on this channel. Hell, if you look around enough, you may even find a reference to a certain game about robots, you know, a bot. Maybe that sounds familiar. Honestly, I was really surprised that there was a bot sound reference in this game. If I wasn't already smiling enough playing through this made my smile even wider. I'm not showing it to y'all though. You need to play it and find it yourselves. It's kind of funny how both Bot Sound and Astra Hunter Zosma ended up having references to each other. We didn't actually plan that out. Anyways, getting treasure plays into Zosma's current Astra rank, which will thusly increase as he gathers more treasure. There's even rewards that can be gained for rank ups in the Betwixt, which serves as a sort of hub area you can go back to during your journey up the Crescent Tower. And I love that. Being rewarded for interacting with the treasure system with powerful and cool equipment. Those sort of secondary ways to improve your characters in RPGs outside of leveling up are the ones I always find the most interesting. It would have been so much less exciting if the only purpose for the rank was just a completion checklist. Though it does serve as that too. Quite handy actually, with each area of the tower labeled out, being able to see what big or small treasures you missed, with the numbered treasures helping you pinpoint where. It made 100%ing this game pretty breezy. And it also factors into one of my favorite things in RPG dungeons, hidden areas and loot. This is obviously born from my love for Doom growing up, but I love secret hunting. You know, hidden walls, switches, all that. I love seeing that in RPGs. Even if a lot of RPGs hide powerful equipment in invisible chests or obtuse hidden areas, but I kinda love that too. Of course, in the case of Zosma, it's really just treasure hidden behind these walls. Back at the Betwixt, there's these bonus optional void dungeons that the player can visit. These are super tough dungeons with previously encountered enemies now powered up, and a uniquely tough boss at the end. This is also where more of the referential treasure items can be found. I love these areas. It makes for a nice break from the main story, and an excellent challenge. The player even gets some extra rewards if they clear it as soon as it opens up before proceeding on with the story. They each represent a color and theme too, which I'm a huge sucker for color coordinated stuff, and I love the visual design of these areas. Even if sometimes the objects and themes can be a tad perplexing, like, I wasn't expecting to be sent to the bathroom dimension, but in the void, you're never sure what you'll get. Another feature that adds to the tenseness of these difficult areas is the fact that being defeated in battle here results in a game over. Normally in this game, upon being defeated, you'll just get sent to the last save. XP and progress still in tow, but you do just lose some money. Not treasure, money. The currency used to buy things. Which I always liked when games did that. Especially games where you can't just save wherever. Back to the void, I love the reuse of enemies too, oddly enough. This is a Torch 60 game, so nearly every enemy has some unique skill or attack that makes them memorable, which makes refighting the tougher version of them interesting, as now you may potentially know their weaknesses and may have to deal with their mechanics on a tougher level. The encounters here are also completely random, in contrast to the normal tower floors, where battle encounters are on screen, which is interesting enough kind of became like the norm for Torch 60 games. They were even kind enough to make running away from battles guaranteed, you just end up losing money from doing so. However, it's in these battles we see a pretty big departure from any past Torch 60 games, and quite a number of turn-based RPGs in general. In Astra Hunter Zosma, you only have control of my gamer Zazie here. It seems like with these kind of solo turn-based RPG games, the idea is to make up for the lack of party members is by giving the singular character multiple actions, and that's what occurs here as well, Zosma getting more actions as he progresses through the story. What makes this interesting is the chain system. Zosma has 4 kinds of actions: physical, magical, item, and Astra. These are all categories for the differing skills and items that can be used in battles, which plays into the chaining system of this game. Using multiple of a same action will begin to build up a chain, which is an increasing multiplier on the following action. So the player needs to choose their actions carefully and build up to bigger attacks with their combos. One thing that took me the longest time to understand was that moves that would normally break a chain will still get the bonus damage from them. So I could use a bunch of magic attacks to build up a high multiplier and then finish things off with a powerful physical skill. And sometimes I spam a bunch of weak healing items in order to build up an item chain, just so I can end it off with a powerful attack. Astra skills are a bit more unique. They can be comboed after, but not into, as they will break any pre-existing chain. Astra skills are more powerful attacks that you can only use once per battle, and are gained from story progress. While the player does have a basic physical and magical attack, all other attacks will cost SP. SP is gained after every turn, and some attacks, such as the aforementioned basic attacks. They reward SP on hit, which adds on to the idea of building up to powerful attacks by mixing in weaker attacks to build meter. Some skills also have certain conditions that need to be met to be used, mostly stemming around how many actions you have. For example, skills that can only be used on your first action, or skills that reward the player bonus SP if they use it as a combo ender. There's a wide variety of skills. However, they're tied to the sigil system. Sigils are gained through story and some optional content, but are basically skill sets that can be equipped to Zosma. How many sigils you can currently have equipped increases over the course of the game. The names of these sigils let on the idea that these are sort of classes that you're equipping, from martial artists, mages, warriors, warlocks, clerics, gamblers, and more. These help farther customize Zosma's abilities in battle, alongside the expected equipment that you can find and buy. So for a single character RPG, Zosma definitely has a lot going on with him. However, this isn't technically a single character RPG, is it? Accompanying our friend Zosma is our even bigger friend, Blobo. Or at least, that's what Zosma calls them, which I personally kinda messed with that name, but you can rename them. Boba. They kinda look like a boba, you know, in a roundabout way. Though maybe they look like one of those, like, bread, jello, dessert cake things. Yeah, I know, I just listed out like 3 different foods, but what I'm saying is, sometimes I look at them, and I just kinda wanna eat them, but like, as a joke, or respectfully, like, you're looking very edible today, my gamer. You know what I'm saying? Zosma, keep your cat away from me, man. Sgt.M has stated that the dynamic between these two characters was inspired by a game known as Guardian's Crusade. For a second time. I was meaning to play Guardian's Crusade before playing Zosma, but I sadly no longer have a life, so I don't know when I'll get to it. It happens. In battle, this companion is fully controlled by AI, performing actions alongside Zosma. However, outside of battle, the player can interact with the companion by allocating points into differing skills and passives. As long as the skill has at least 1 point in it, the companion will be able to use it. Farther points will serve to upgrade the move. So the player does have some say of what the companion does during battles. More out-of-battle interactions include the ability to equip the monster with gear, much like with Zosma, alongside feeding them cookies, which will give them a buff for the next several battles. I only fed the monster a single time, which was before the last super boss of the game. Don't be like me. These cookies are straight up everywhere, and can even be bought at the previously mentioned hub world. And you can only have like 3 of the same cookie currently fed, so it's not like you can just dump all your cookies and become overpowered. Plus, the game warns you when bosses are coming up, so popping some cookies in before then is a good idea, or if you find yourself having trouble against a certain boss. It should be noted that Zosma is the only character that matters when it comes to combat, as in, if he's defeated at any point in a fight, then that's considered a defeat, and the battle will end. Furthermore, Zosma is more likely to be targeted over the companion, because I guess everyone just hates this guy, and I'm kind of about it. So that's something to consider when you're thinking about who to use the max stat increase items on. And while that may sound scary, the companion can gain a skill which will auto-revive Zosma if he falls, once per battle, so you can think of him having at least 2 lives to rely on. He does have a safety cushion. That's the basics of the battle system. There is of course always more to talk about, from the scenarios you're put in, to the certain boss gimmicks, but this is overall what the player will be experiencing the most when it comes to the combat of Astra Hunter Zosma. You may have noticed something by my gameplay. Something rather odd. In fact, if you've been watching for even a minute, you'd have seen it by now. My companion is only healing me. There's this term you may have heard before around game design, the concept of optimizing the fun out of games. I have this unfortunate trait where I find myself often optimizing the fun out of RPGs in particular. It's sort of a spacey test when it comes to RPGs, whether I can make it through the game without finding a 100% strategy that clears every fight. And I hate to say it, but I have some pretty mixed thoughts when it comes to this game's battle system. Let's start with the companion, the big mechanic of this game, this cool character that you can have so much variety and expression with, was a glorified regen buff for me. The game tells you at the beginning that Zosma has very few ways of healing himself, and then gives you a character that can heal all every turn. I don't know, I felt like I just connected the easiest 2 puzzle pieces of my life. Zosma can already handle the offense, but healing? That's a weak spot that the companion can perfectly cover up. So why not just disable every other ability except for the healing one? Plus, it's guaranteed. I don't know who my companion is going to target with its attacks, or what attacks it will use, but if I can just make it always heal, then that's consistent. Choosing anything else wouldn't make sense. So yeah, the second I met this character, it became clear to me what would be the most obvious and best strategy for it. And it sadly didn't take too long for me to find something similar with Zosma as well. 3 of the sigils the player gets at least the midpoint of the game, known as Fire Mage, Ice Mage, and Thunder Mage. These grant a melee Sunder ability, and a stronger magical spell version than the ones that you begin with. So if you have fire, the Fire Mage would give you super fire, you know. These physical Sunder abilities give SP, and also forces a weakness upon the enemy of that respective element. So here's the strategy. Start battle off with Magic Charge, which gives 2 SP. Now you can use a Sunder skill. Use that Sunder skill to give an enemy a weakness to a skill, then spam magic attacks, and attack with that weakness. Honestly, with the knowledge I know now, you don't need to spam magic attacks, just spam physical attacks to build up that multiplier, and then send that multiplier off with the strong magic. Alternatives to this strategy involves ending the first turn with Jackknife, a skill that rewards the player with tons of SP if used last, because after this first turn, you should be able to set up the full cycle of abilities every single turn until the fight ends. So now, every turn is just Sunder, filler magic to chain, into respective elemental magic. This works on every single enemy encounter in this game, unless if they have magic reflect, which may be 2 enemies in the game. That's wild to me. It's not even that it's a handful of sigils. These 3 sigils on their own are broken. You just need to choose one. Even without magic charge, which you start with, and jackknife, which you get right after, being able to give any enemy a weakness and then exploit that weakness on the same turn with a powerful attack that they can't defend against is just an unstoppable strategy. Side tangent, magic in general in this game is already very powerful. I fail to see an appeal to the physical attacks in a game where elemental weaknesses exist, which the player can straight up give any enemy. And the game also tells you that Zosma can't crit, so why bother? What's good about physical attacks? They sometimes hit all enemies, I guess, but I have an answer for that too. I decided to focus on magic Zosma after I got the poison skill, which does see use on boss counters and the rare encounter with more than 3 enemies, which is like maybe 1 encounter in this game. What I'm saying is that Volga showed me the light on how strong poisoning can be in Torch 60 games. And I really hate to say it, but this strategy kind of got pretty boring. Every fight is just the same combination of actions, and after a minute or so, the fight is over. I chose hard mode for my playthrough, which is something I would thoroughly recommend against. This is one of those hard modes in an RPG that I find to be pretty limiting. Like, maybe there's other broken builds and strategies out there, but this is the best I could find. Enemies are tankier and sometimes take multiple sunder cycles, which makes normal encounters pretty sloggy. And when the game is as difficult as it is on hard, I feel like there's no other way to play the game than having that cat set to heal bot mode. Furthermore, I feel like it makes some sigils mandatory, such as the Cleric sigil, due to it offering the Bastion skill, which is basically this game's guard button. In hard mode, even with the extra life, there were times where I got absolutely one-shotted. Enemies do telegraph when they're about to use a powerful crit-inducing physical attack or a strong spell, which is funny because that's something you usually see in games with a guard button. But no, guard is hidden behind a sigil. And on hard mode, ignoring those signals can result in an instant kill. Keep in mind, I'm not the kind of person who just jumps on top tiers and optimal stuff in games or something. There's a good way to stop me from optimizing the fun out of games, and that's adding goofy mechanics that I find fun enough to detour from more ideal strats. Like, when I play fighting games, I usually always end up playing the low to bottom tier characters, because they usually have something weird and interesting about them. Zosma almost lands on a funny with the gambling class. Like, shoot, luck-based funny stuff? Take a swing, I'm down. But that sigil definitely doesn't add enough to interest me, or to even find it too fun. I think the system is just too rigid. You'd think with all the actions per turn, it'd offer player expression and creativity. But in the case of what I found, no, not really. It's more like I sometimes mess up the menu because every turn is like entering a combo of menu presses over and over. Maybe it's because nearly every skill in this game costs SP. It makes it feel more like a puzzle game, having to spend the right skills to build the amount of meter to land a strong attack. And like all puzzles, there's a correct answer, and usually only one. And most of the fights in this game have that same solution to it. It just feels like doing a puzzle over and over again. It doesn't feel like there's actually that much I can do in battle, besides doing the one combo that deals the most damage. Just filler skills into big damage skill. This can be seen by the great game design ever present in these games of the boss fights with varying mechanics. These were still the funnest parts of the game for me, and for a second made me thankful I picked hard mode because they were a challenge and I did have to mix up my strategy at points. I feel like Torch 60 had to try so hard on the boss fights to force players to try different things that it just sort of highlights my flaws with the system as it is. And what worries me is that this idea seems to be what the game encourages. Like, I'm not doing something weird here. The game tells you that you should be building up to strong combos. Like, I don't know how to feel when I realized that once I had max action points, it became more viable to just spam basic magic chains into a strong magic ender spell due to the increased multiplier rather than relying on sunder skills. Though of course if I understood that you could transfer from physical to magical and keep the multiplier at the time, I probably would have found something even more broken. It's just sort of not that interesting. Especially when every battle I have to constantly use the same weak skills over and over again. Like, it just makes me think of playing an RPG where I can just press the stronger skill button, attack an enemy with that, and move on. But I will say, all of what I said so far, I don't entirely hold this against the game. This is a me problem. I'm sure most people who played this game probably didn't find this strategy. They probably didn't set the cat to be always healing. And they probably just messed around more with the sigils. This isn't something I'd ever say, hey, Sgt.M, you should change this. Unless if I was playtesting, in which case I would have been like, yeah, Sunder attacks shouldn't add weaknesses. Just make them elemental melee attacks, or something that gives your physical attacks an elemental attribute. It'd make melee more worthwhile in that case, and could add more synergy in between skills and different sigils, which could be pretty cool. Magic doesn't really have a lot of all-hitting attacks when it comes to the base 3 elements, so being able to give your physical attacks that hit all enemies a magical effect on them, that'd be pretty cool. You're combining sigils, you're combining skills, and it requires some more thought than just hitting the same button over and over again. But still, I can forgive this game for what it was going for because it's a pretty unique idea. And I respect it for that reason. It's cool that it tried something different, something that not many RPGs go for, and that still made things fun. Alongside the fact that it's still a Torch 60 game, with fun stories, characters, and worlds to explore. There's never a time where I was like, oh, I don't want to keep playing this game. I was still pretty excited to boot the game back up and play more. I was wanting to play more. And that's because even with my gameplay grievances, Torch 60 always delivers so much more beyond that, with their worlds, their fun scenarios, and characters. I feel like even if I ran into my problems with the combat system, if I can find enjoyment from all other aspects of the game to keep me going, to stay engaged and continue playing the game, then I think that's the sign of a truly great RPG, which I believe Astra Hunter Zosma to be. It's just that at the end of the day, I replayed Soma Union on the unlockable super hard second playthrough difficulty. If Zosma had the same thing, I would definitely not replay it on that difficulty. Did I get ya? Scaredy cat, you gonna cry? I don't know what I'm saying. But that's enough about gameplay. Now I want to run down a bit of the story, the characters, and some brief thoughts of the individual chapters of the game. I'm not going to be super thorough, because I've been kind of steering away from videos where I just recap the game. I mean, you should just go play the game instead. Which I know, funny, I know what's coming, bruh. I know what I'm working on. But I do have some brief things I want to say, and it will go into spoilers. So skip here if you want, just, that's basically the end of the video, so I guess starting out, I want to talk about the humor. This isn't something I talk about with most other games, but Torch 60 games have always made me laugh. I mean, just booting this game up puts a smile on my face. That's just the reaction they elicit from me. The humor is a little different this time around. I might be tripping, but I feel like it goes for a very self-aware approach. A lot of meta humor towards RPGs, previous Torch 60 games. It's funny and all, but sometimes sort of takes me out of the moment when Zosma just seemingly breaks character and turns into a gamer. I mean, I guess that's the team he's repping, but like, damn, am I playing Hero Man? I do personally feel like it's a tad distracting. Like, Torch 60 isn't really taking this world seriously enough. I feel like whenever I think about Zosma, it's like a pretty picture with a cool stain placed on it. Even if that cool stain is small, when I think about the game and the world, it's probably the humor that comes to my mind first. But with that in mind, I did find the game very funny. Such as every time the companion meowed, like it always sounded like someone just put a mic up to a cat, which, yeah, it actually is what they did. But you can hear the background noise with the meow, and I find that really charming. And the halftime show in the Coliseum was absolutely fantastic. It's actually amazing how easily entertained I am by seeing sprites rotate at fast speeds. The music adds a lot too. This was a legendary Torch 60 moment in my books. So yeah, it's very fun. It's just hard to tell if the game wants to be taken seriously when something important in the story happens, only to immediately go to Betwixt and have someone tell me that this is the end of the video game. I guess before getting into the individual chapters, I'll talk about our main hero Zosma, Step On Up. Which, I suppose this isn't the first time we've actually seen him. Remember that one character from Epilogue Adventures who I didn't know? I'm guessing that's Zosma, but it looks like he's gotten a bit of a paint job between games. Gotta rep the purple armor. I won't lie, the fit is nice. And the 2 horns on top of the head? Gamer! But as for Zosma himself, I think he's pretty interesting. Hopefully I'm not wrong here, but I don't think you're supposed to like him. He's this loser that's just been spending his whole life going to this dungeon every day, hoping to make it big as a treasure hunter. He finds himself in the Crescent Tower, where he begins to learn that he's here to prove himself worthy of being an Astra Hunter by granting the wishes of those who've passed on. But he's also just like boo-boo complaining the whole time. I mean, I get the vibe. Everyone's being vague around him, and he's probably pretty tired of people messing with him at this point. But you just discovered something cool. You're surrounded by treasure. Isn't this what you wanted? I don't know. Sometimes you get what you want in life, but it's so unbelievable that you become hesitant to truly accept it. A part of me feels like he's just doing this for himself. They make a big point of that in the tournament arc chapter, where he straight up says that he's only helping this guy so he can get out, which I feel like sets up for at least one moment where he decides to help someone even if it won't help him move on. But no, I felt that energy straight to the end. His sister put him on this whole journey to make him a better person, but I can't help but to feel that he just cares about getting out with the treasure and raising his rank. I personally don't think he's a very great person, but he does do good things for people, if that makes sense. I feel like I already said a lot about the aspects of the first area, some of the puzzles, the friend we meet, we get introduced to separating here. Sometimes we take control of our blob friend to hit switches and such. Touching enemies causes a reset, which, with how narrow some of these platforms are and how random enemies' movements are, it makes these segments a little tough. But if you know RPG Maker, you know that enemies can't interact with you while they're transitioning from one tile to another, so running past them isn't too hard. I think it's pretty funny that I solved this music pillar puzzle without the hint node, rather fast too. Guess I got lucky. But there's not much for me to say on chapter 1. Zosma is a jerk, but we already know that. Well, Bubba, it's been real. That's pretty good. Betwixt is neat. Reminds me of a ZX Spectrum game with the solid color sprites and the large focus on a black background. Chapter 2 is where things really get started. A nice little mushroom autumn aesthetic, and I love the battle theme here. It might be my favorite one in this game. It's very playful, it has a unique sound, and it matches the area and the characters of the chapter, as Zosma spends the time in this area getting punked by these 2 fairies. But he does learn to bond with his cat buddy, where we get a cool team ability that we can use. This one here allowing us to break through troublesome rocks, while also factoring into small puzzle segments, as we can't use jump pads in this form. So later on, there's some pretty neat puzzles that get made with that idea and how to maneuver around an area. Though not gonna lie, seeing Zosma riding the companion like this makes me realize that Sgt.M's true dream when it came to making this game was just wanting to make a game that starred a slime knight, and I understand the vibe. This is a nice chapter, especially when introducing the main conflict of the game. The player doesn't know this place and these 2 fairies before reading about them and soon learning that they have one last wish before passing on, giving the rather joyous, silly episode a more somber end. Also, screw the sealer slug. Always stopping my darn chains. Who hurt you? Chapter 3, we're at the arena. This is the most humorous chapter. I feel like the first NPC you meet asking you about the tournament is a pretty good tone setter. I'm not sure if I can exactly explain why that's funny to people. We got this knight dude named Apollon that wants to set up one last great tournament, and that's what we do for him. Zosma gathering spring pads and instruments to hype up the crowd. Though speaking of pads, I very much so enjoyed the character that was just a jump pad. No kidding, before playing this game, I was thinking of how funny a jump pad enemy would be in a Torch 60 game. But my idea was like a mimic, yeah, a jump pad mimic. You'd step on a jump pad, and suddenly a fight would just start. And it's this angry little goober like, hey, you think you can just step on me? Something like that. But this is pretty great too, having this whole character that's part of the story. Even if this does kind of tie into my point about this game's meta humor, I love this gamer. They're great. I think my favorite Torch 60 characters are just the random objects with eyes. It's just so fun that these characters exist in these worlds. But yeah, Sgt.M, haha, funny jump pad, right? But when are we going to address the real instance that's been ever present in these games? You know what I'm talking about. Crescent moons. They are everywhere in this game. You literally fight waning and waxing. The top tier weapons and armor are known as the lunar set. There's crescent moon statues. We're at the crescent moon towers! Not to mention how often they appear in previous games. This all started with the Island of the Moon back in Yusha, huh? I'm starting to think the M in Sgt.M actually stands for Sergeant Moon. Maybe I misremember, but when we were just going to get a moon character, like Twyla from Mario Party or Mr. Shine from Kirby. Next thing I know, y'all at Torch 60 are going to make a game with Crescent in the title. Imagine that. I'm playing, I know what it's like. I actually have my own thing, where I often put hearts and star marks on characters and their clothes, like it's Lucky Charm pieces or something. We're just Lucky Charm coded gamers, it's okay. Like, I literally have a walking heart and star character, so I'm guilty too. Sometimes I look at a character like, what can I add to them? They're missing something. And suddenly the hearts and stars just come out. Maybe even some lightning bolts too. We sometimes just have things that aesthetically make us happy. Anyways, Zosma learns the power of the hopper ball. Yes, I did have to look up the name of these things. And can now bounce up with his cat, only on certain platforms. This doesn't really serve much of a multi-purpose function as the cruising does, but does allow for some layered areas and some backtrack treasures. Anyways, the tournament's pretty fun. Once again, a lot of silly enemies. Shoutouts to, of course, my legends, Flarp and Droll. But also Patch Senior, I don't know what to say. I just like rectangle-shaped friends. They make me happy. Oh yeah, you also get to name your team. So no, they aren't really called Team Gamers. I just came up with that name. Which is pretty funny when Zosma gets tight about being called a gamer later. Embrace it. Oh yeah! I totally forgot to mention this, but I really appreciate how Zosma's dialogue changes upon leveling, depending on where he's at in the game. Just a neat detail showing his thoughts of the current situation, even if more often than not I accidentally mash through it like, shoot! Of course, the final battle of the tournament is against Apollon, who passes on after we help him with his wish of hosting one last tournament. Which does sort of set up the cycle for the story, each chapter involving the arrival into a new area, where we see someone from long ago, and help them pass on by fulfilling their wish, and then getting to see a flashback between Zosma and his missing sister. I was pretty interested to see what could be done with that. Take the same idea and put different spins on it, but that's not really what happens, instead just offering us the ability to meet different characters and see their problems. Chapter 4 sees us at Corvus Casino, where we meet this gambler named Saros. I like the vibe of this chapter. I think it has the most unique fights, especially against the 3-7s. You know, the quiz show, the card game, it's all neat. And I don't know how to explain it, but these 3-7s might be up there with my favorite Torch 60 character designs. They're rad as hell. I love the number 7. I like Saros and her story and how vague it is, alongside her conversation with Zosma, who admits that he never took risks in life, which led him to living every day the same, too afraid to break out and try something new. Maybe chapter 5 is my favorite. I mean, I'm a sucker for pirate things, and SpecialAgentApe's pirate music does wonders, as well as being able to sail the seas with the one and only Captain Scuttlebone. For those who don't know, I mean, I don't even entirely understand Scuttlebone, but from my inference, She was a character that maybe at one point was going to get her own game, but never happened. I don't know what was planned with her. And there's just something so warm about this chapter. How Scuttlebone takes the lead, how she has her own level up screen. It really feels like Sgt.M got to put this character to rest and put a close to her story. Chapter 6 is the final chapter of the game. Having learned that the masked woman is his sister, Zosma races to the top in order to grant her wish, now understanding that like the others here, she ended up passing away. I think Nadir is a really cool character, and it's kind of underrated. Like, even Zosma just shoves them out of the way. Kind of assholey, really, but you know. I'm not sure if y'all follow my vibe, but these eyeball enemies sort of remind me of Monster Party back on the NES. This chapter is the quickest, I feel, as Zosma is sort of entering speedrun mode in order to help his sister. And I feel like the game itself is following suit, because the ending is just so fast. We come up here, oh no, Zosma's dead? But that's okay, we can bring him back. Oh, okay. Should have said that before bro started questioning everything. We help out Nadir by proxy of just wanting to leave. We connect our soul, we reach the top, fight Deneb, say goodbye to Boba, Zosma escapes with all his treasure. Suddenly everyone immediately 180. It's like, oh wow, I will never be as cool as Zosma. Suddenly Zosma becomes the highest ranked Astra Hunter in the world, becomes famous, opens a museum. Boba comes back for reasons I'm still not sure, maybe I'm missing something, and boom, a boy in his blob 3. Like, shoot! I feel like that all went by pretty fast. I'm not actually certain on this, but I'm assuming this game has some sort of Luigi's Mansion, Wario's Land ending deal, where depending on how much treasure you gather in the game, changes what Zosma will build at the end. I collected everything, so he built a museum to spread the stories of the people he met on his journey. But I don't know, I wish there was more to that. Like maybe at some point in the game, him wondering how we do preserve these characters' legacy, maybe considering building a place to do that, and then the ending follows up on this by showing that he had a museum built. Or Zosma's death in general. Like, shoot, I really thought he wasn't gonna make it. After Soma Union, I was just ready for another depressing ending. But we don't even get that long to dwell on his death, it's just a whoa! Oh, okay then. And I just didn't really care much for Zosma's ending. Like, he did all these things, but I wish there was at least one screen or two of him in his museum, people visiting it and such. It's just hard for me to care about the Astra Hunters when we only met like 4 other ones. And it's hard for me to care about Zosma becoming top rank when like, we never really get to see or explore Zosma's world. Sure, we get the past reflected in the tower, but I know nothing about the current world. Like, it's nice that these characters' legacy is being carried on, but to who? To what world? Well, I don't know what's going on outside the tower. I just personally wished the ending was given more room to breathe. I actually really like the message and theme of Astra Hunter Zosma. Coming into the game, I thought it would just be some story of Zosma and this clan of treasure hunters rising up the ranks and beating out rival hunters. When really, that aspect doesn't really matter that much in this game. This is a game a lot more about the legacy of your life, helping others experience their last wish that they never could when they were alive. I think about that a lot. Our inevitable deaths, the things we manage to accomplish, and the stories that we leave behind, alongside the people of the future who choose to carry our legacy with them. I know quite a few people that are no longer here, and I thought about my own decision to leave them behind, leave their legacy, their story, to leave them to be forgotten. Will I be remembered? I know my goal. I know what I want to accomplish, my game series of course. Will my work have the impact to become remembered? When will the day come where it will be impossible for anyone to ever know of me again? My true death. Should it matter? Does it matter to be remembered? I think I'd be too dead to care. I don't know. I'm an agender it's monster with quite the emotional situation. Sometimes I think there may be other people out there that I could inspire. Let the world know that we exist. I guess the encouraging message of Zosma is to spend your life while you can. Zosma himself is a character who is stuck in an endless loop in life, returning to the same dungeon every day, probably for the rest of his life, until this adventure showed him how there's so much more. These people helped him as much as he did to them, and he exited the tower a world-traveling hero to be remembered forever, alongside the people who helped him, the people he cared enough to pass on to the future. In some essence, immortality. Maybe the vagueness of Zosma's world was on purpose to reflect ours, and the actions that we can do to be remembered and to thrive. I really like that message in the case of the character Nadir, someone who decided to spend their whole existence trying to stop death rather than living life, and dying of failure, only finding solace in the fact that they were able to bring Zosma back. It's just something to think about. The things in life we won't be able to finish, the regrets that we'll leave here with. If I were to die now, how much would I regret it? I personally think it's important that we spend every minute we can towards those goals, no matter how strange, small, or silly it is. We all have what we live for, and part of life is reaching that point where we can discover what that is, and another part is understanding how we'll do it. It's thoughtful. Maybe I always look too deep into these games, but I always want to believe that they have something to say. And yeah, that's Astra Hunter Zosma. I think it's another great game from Torch 60. It's not an upgrade or the next big adventure following Soma Union, but honestly it wasn't until I typed that sentence that I even considered that. That's never how I came into this game. It's its own thing. It's brief, but does a lot with that time. You're always bouncing from colorful world to colorful world, character to character. I never got to say this, but it's something I always appreciated from Soma Union. Just how brisk the pacing is. You're always moving from one location to the next. But of course, I also appreciate and do sort of miss the Brave Hero Yusha days of a more traditional RPG world. But I do suppose there's plenty of games out there that replicate that. I 100% recommend Astra Hunter Zosma. It's got some enjoyable enough gameplay if you aren't a nerd, colorful characters, worlds, and a message I really liked. Torch 60 games always have that emotional heart to them, one that you can really feel when the people who create a game truly care about it. There's many things that make Torch 60 games special, and that's one of them. As for the future of T60, well, I don't know when it will happen, but you know I'm there for epilogue adventures. And the recent revival of Crescent Prism, I never wanted to tell y'all, but I was always hoping that y'all would go back to that game. It's funny, because I have no idea what y'all will be cooking with that game, but I'm excited all the same to explore that world and game all over again. I think it has a lot of potential, but I'll try not to let my mind run wild with fantasy. As for now, Sgt.M, SpecialAgentApe, it was nice experiencing your art, and I can't wait until I get the opportunity to do so again. My name is Spacey Soundy, and I'll catch y'all later. Shoutouts to Ken Chiago, my Golly Gamer tier supporter. If y'all want to see my videos a week earlier, consider subscribing to my Ko-Fi. It's only like $2, and hey, it helps me towards my goal. Really, anything does. But from one vid to the next, I gotta start running. There's no slowing down. Pieces.